Arnold Hyde, our racing control executive, recently returned from an international conference held in Hong Kong, where the excessive use of the stick was an agenda item. Hyde sits on the committee for the International Harmonization of Race Day Rules. This committee is one of 6 regulatory committees of the International Federation of Horse Racing Authorities. The Federation is the world body for the international sport of horse racing. It amalgamates around 60 members or national racing authorities across the globe. Arnold, what's the purpose of the Committee for the Harmonization of Race Day Rules?
Okay, Michelle, the International Harmonization of Race Day Rules Committee identifies rules in consultation with the Executive Council of the International Federation of Horse Racing Authorities to establish where a common approach would benefit most racing jurisdictions internationally. In other words, to make the rules pretty much identical or as similar as possible, which would promote the internationalization of horse racing in general. Its function is to draft proposed articles in respect of those rules, and this goes through the Executive Council of the IFHA and is subsequently included in the Handbook for International Breeding, Racing and Wagering, which all takes into account fairness, integrity, safety and welfare of horses and riders over and above the commercial factors and the confidence of the betting public, in other words, to attract new customers to our wonderful sport.
Why is it important to have uniformity in race day rules across national racing authorities worldwide?
Michelle, the racing world is becoming smaller all the time. We take international races here in South Africa and they take our racing in a number of countries around the world. So horses travel, and hopefully our own horses from this country will travel to other jurisdictions in the near future. But trainers and riders also travel around the world, and if they are riding in South Africa, they need to expect more or less the same when they travel to other jurisdictions. It's the same with our customers or our betting public or interested parties that watch our racing locally. When they watch racing from another jurisdiction, if something occurs in a race or if decisions are made, they can expect the same sort of outcome using the same parameters as they would expect here in South Africa. So I think it's worthwhile to establish a common approach around the world in terms of policies and rules, so that we can harmonize the racing product in general.
How did the topic of the excessive use of the stick come to be on the agenda?
Well, we had a race at Tiffin Racecourse in November 2018 where the riders didn't carry crops in that particular race. We termed it a cropless race or hands and heels race. And I thought that this would be of interest to the other delegates at the international conference. And it was very well received, and it actually conjured up a lot of discussion and debates about the use of the crop in general.
And a warm, hands and heels right, Randall Simon's a length. Reach for the line, 6 lengths back, owl in the tree.
This is a universal issue that is considered at a number of their conferences in each jurisdiction. And in Europe in particular, it is very pressing that policies are decided on regarding the use of the crop, because as the international delegates see it, we'd rather be proactive in deciding how we're going to deal with the use of the crop and the perceptions thereof than face pressures from the outside, in other words, organizations from outside of racing that would negatively impact on the perception of horse racing and would be detriment to the attraction of interested parties or new customers to the sport worldwide.
Is the excessive use of the stick as of much concern in South Africa as in other international racing countries?
It is definitely, Michelle. It's of concern in South Africa. I think the cropless race in November definitely brought that out. It confirmed that opinion. I think a lot of interested parties are concerned about the use of the crop, and I think the need is for educating people in general regarding what equipment is currently in use. We do use a cushioned crop in this country and around the world, but not many people are aware of the specifications of this crop. So we need to educate the people within the industry, but also people outside the industry. But racing is all about perceptions, and we need to be very serious about how people look at our sport. And it certainly was confirmed that the use of the crop was seen as an issue, and some people see it as a device that is cruel, an instrument that is cruel to the horse. So this is obviously negative to the growth of the sport and negative to attracting new customers to the sport. Around the world, they have seen this for quite a time now, and in certain jurisdictions, they have been very strict in the implementation of policies and procedures relating to the use of the crop. And I think we need to follow suit and certainly get more serious about how we view use of the crop and tighten up where we can.
What are the implications in going forward?
Well, we have rules in place that are used around the world.
The use of the crop is covered in terms of Rule 58.10.2, which states that a rider of a horse shall not misuse his crop or use his crop in an unnecessary or excessive manner during the running of a race. Coupled with that rule, there is obviously the guidelines which dictate acceptable and unacceptable use of the whip, which is quite a detailed set of guidelines. If any of those guidelines are then breached by a rider in the race, that then kicks in the breach of the rule, and the riders are then penalised in terms of that.
So we are pretty strict as it stands, but we need to ensure that we go to the next step and that we do tighten up where we can. Obviously, as someone who watches a lot of racing, both locally and abroad, in my position, I see where a lot of riders are still using their crops on horses where they shouldn't be using them, horses that are not capable of running a place, in other words, in the top 5 positions. I think we're also pretty liberal in the number of strikes that we allow in races. If we go to the international policies, we can see that they've tightened up with regards to the general number of strikes that are allowed to be used in a race. Some jurisdictions like Germany, for instance, will permit 5 strikes in the whole race. And in some European countries, when the number of strikes starts to get to 12 and above, they look at it very seriously and term it as a breach of the rules. We're a little bit more liberal in South Africa, and we need to take a step back and evaluate where we want to go and where we currently are and what changes need to be made. But obviously, this involves consultation with the riders, with the trainers, with the owners and the betting public, because we don't want to put the integrity of the race into question, and we still want horses to race and on their merits and to ensure that the results of races are true. So we need to consult with everyone and get to the right sort of decision.
What time frame could you put on that, and when could consultations start?
I think they need to start immediately, Michelle. We have started with the cropless race.
Awam and Verdi, the last two, for this Hands and Heels initiative here at Turffontein for the very first time, 1,400 metres.
We are currently looking at hosting another cropless race, or one that's similar in kind, perhaps even riders using or carrying a crop and using it in the backhand position. But this is still being spoken about and discussed with the riders and trainers, so there needs to be buy-in from all the parties. I did watch your piece and was most interested to hear the views expressed by retired riders, some of which are trainers now. So it's pressing. We need to move ahead as the rest of the world is moving ahead and treat it as urgent and very, very necessary. The whole purpose of the Harmonisation Committee is to ensure that these rules and policies are as consistent as we possibly can get around the racing world.
There seems to be general consensus that there's still a place for the use of the stick in racing, but the way in which it's used needs to be addressed. Would you be in agreement with that?
I would be in agreement, Michelle, yes. It's an important tool of the jockey's trade. They obviously go through a 5-year apprenticeship at the academy, and they are trained on how to use the crop. The riders do see it as a necessity to control the horse as well. We must bear in mind that a thoroughbred racehorse can weigh half a ton. So they do see it as a tool to be able to assist them to control the horse, but it needs to be a tool that's used in the right way. I think it's all about working with the academy and working with the apprentices in the early stages of their careers, but also getting input from the experienced riders. I think it can be for the betterment of racing and can attract new people to our sport.
Whilst we focused on the use of the stick, it's not the only topic that the International Committee for the Harmonisation of Race Day Rules deals with. Arnold Hyde explains.
The Harmonisation Committee is very important, not only about the crop though, it's a whole host of reasons why this is one of the most important committees in the world of racing. We want to try and harmonise as many rules as we possibly can. So even when we get to objection decisions, non-runner decisions, the penetrometer readings, for instance, what equipment is permitted, what overweight is permitted. Those type of decisions need to be harmonized, and I think it can only add to the spectacle of racing and ensure that our product is accepted by the international world. And then when we watch international jurisdictions, we can understand and accept decisions that are made overseas. So the committee meets at least once a year, and the developments are very exciting, and we have 11 members on this committee from around the world. So I think it is progressing the world of racing, and it's a very good committee that is making great strides in the world of racing.